There's a crisis of disturbed young men in our country. They fall through the cracks of society and oftentimes land in the dark crevices of the internet. Instead of seeking love and acceptance or simple human interactions with people in their community, they seek approval from other lost souls online. Sometimes they become radicalized and take their hatred out on the innocent people. The stark rise in mass school shootings is apparent. There have been 14 since Columbine, killing 169 people. Many want to blame it on guns, but Americans have been legally armed since 1776. It's important to note that over the last few decades, we've seen the collapse of the nuclear family. Divorce rates have skyrocketed, if there was ever a marriage at all, and fathers have left the picture. Out of the mass school shootings, where 10 or more people were killed, most of the shooters didn't have a dad in their life. It's one of the few things that the shooters have in common. Church attendance is down in America, and COVID has forced young Americans into isolation. And we don't even know what kind of damage social media is doing to the brains of young Americans. But the media and the politicians don't want to talk about that. They're too obsessed with the how, the weapon used, instead of the why, what brought the person to a place where they wanted to kill children, and how our society is missing what's happening right before our own eyes. It's important we ask these questions and look into the cultural factors. Marco Rubio is a senator from Florida who joins us now. So, Senator, what do you think's in play here? Because it just can't be all about guns. There's got to be something else.
Yeah, I mean, I think the intro to this actually touches upon it. It's not about the how necessarily, but the why, in the sense that these are people that want to harm people in a mass scale, and the instrument they use in many cases are guns, but that sentiment of wanting to hurt people is the one we really need to really focus on. I don't know if there's a blanket for every single one of these. I certainly am not a psychologist or a sociologist, but I've read a lot about these things because I want to become informed. The one thing I can tell you is we do have tools available now for risk assessment. It's one of the ways the Secret Service protects presidents. It's not so much about the physical protection alone, is that they are able to profile and identify people that they believe pose a threat to a president or a leader, and are able to go to them and prevent them from acting. And that same system that is able to identify that risk assessment protocols exist for things like mass shooting. And then the question becomes, can you have tools in place to identify and intervene before people take that next step? And oftentimes that's difficult to do because in the case of a school, for example, we've built up a culture in many places where we don't want to criminalize 16 and 17-year-olds. We don't want law enforcement hanging around the school campus and sort of stigmatizing people. But in many of these shootings, I mean, Las Vegas being one of the exceptions, a guy that really still don't know too much about the motivation behind that terrible tragedy. But these others are people that didn't just snap from one moment to the next. We'll learn more about this murderer, but we know about the one in Florida, we know about the one in other places, and these are people that for a period of time were headed in this direction, and there was nothing in place to catch it and stop it from happening before it got to that point.
That's interesting, your Secret Service analogy, because you're right. You know, they send these letters or they make these threats, and then the Secret Service will pay them a visit. They'll knock on the door and they'll say, "Hey, Mike, what's going on? How you feeling?" And then even when the president goes into that city, they have a whole list of people that they go check on. You're not going to go anywhere near the event, are you? You're not supposed to. And how would that look in school? And is this something that you've tried to bring up in legislation? And have the Democrats agreed with that?
Well, we have, and actually there are programs in place that fund that, and we were able to do that and continue to fund it every year since. And we led that effort after Parkland. And it has to be multidisciplinary, right? You have to have input from all kinds of places. So it might be a law enforcement interaction combined with what a school counselor or a teacher is seeing, combined with what a family member or a parent is reporting. And then all of these things come into a central location as opposed to being bifurcated from each other. It's a really useful tool, and it's one that we should use more because, unfortunately, there's someone out there right now that's going to be the next school shooter because they're watching this stuff on TV, and it's going to inspire them to act. It's a terrible thing.
I think you're right. You create a little threat matrix for a school district that identifies people based on a number of factors, and then you're more aware. I think that's really smart, and I'd like to see that. Thank you so much for coming on Primetime, and thanks for everything you're doing for the state of Florida and for the nation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.